All right, I am super excited for our next session. We have two presenters with us. Our first presenter is Erin Pillsbury. She's been an educator since 2003, and all of her experience has been in the Arizona public school system. She completed her teaching certificate through Ottawa University in early childhood education. She also holds an early childhood special education certificate from Northern Arizona University. In addition to that, Erin has a master's in ed leadership from Ottawa. That is awesome, and we're so excited that you joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Our next presenter is, hang on just one second, I don't want to stop this. Okay, our next presenter is Jennifer Zaur. She's an assistant professor of early childhood education at Ashford University. I have the privilege of working with her every single day. She's amazing. She has a BA in elementary education and a master's degree in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in language and literacy, both from Arizona State University. And she has taught many grades in the elementary school for years. And for the past 7 years, she has been working at the university level, and we're excited to have her today too. So ladies, if you will switch to the next slide, we will do the disclaimer really quickly.
Give me one sec, Tisha.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, the first disclaimer says that an online degree from Ashford University does not lead to immediate teacher licensure in any state. So we will give you a few minutes to read through this. I know most of you have read this at least 15 times if you've been here the last 2 days, but we just want to make sure that you understand. All right, and the next disclaimer.
Oh, you put that. I'm sorry, Tisha. I'm having my mouse just being silly. There we go.
That's okay. Technology does that sometimes. The next disclaimer just states that Ashford University does not take responsibility for any outside websites, videos, or links shared. So ladies, with no further ado, thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, welcome again. We're not going to share too much about ourselves because Tisha did such a fabulous job introducing us. But once again, my name is Jen Zaur, and I'm thrilled to be here and to teach you all some more about conflict resolution and resilience.
And I'm Erin Pillsbury. I'm also thrilled to be here, and Jen and I share the same passion about conflict and resilience.
All right, so let's get started. Whoops. Okay, so before we get started today, we wanted to just take a minute to do a quick little poll and find out on a scale of 1 to 5, and if you would share in the chat with us, that would be great. On a scale of 1 to 5, what's your level of knowledge or your comfort level when it comes to supporting children with conflict resolution and resilience? So just type in the chat, a 1 on a scale of 1 to 5. Awesome. So I see a lot of different ranges. Nobody who seems like it's a brand new topic to them, but a lot of people in the middle and some people who feel pretty knowledgeable. Holly, it depends on the conflict. It most definitely does. Yeah. Well, we really hope that today we can help to build on the knowledge that you already have, and that even if you already feel really confident in the knowledge you do have about conflict resolution and resilience, that you can hopefully walk away with at least 1 or 2 new ideas that you could take and use in your work with young children. So let's get started. You might be wondering why. Why are we talking about resilience and conflict resolution? Well, according to the National Survey of Children's Health, almost half, think about that for a minute, almost half of the nation's children have experienced at least 1 or more types of trauma. This means, and get ready, this is a pretty staggering number. It means that approximately 34,825,978 children nationwide have experienced some type of childhood trauma. That's a really large number. And this same study goes on to say that children aren't naturally born with resilience. The more that resilience is nurtured within them and modeled and provided to them by their family and their community, then the more they are able to respond well to the stress they experience with more resilience. So we know that it affects a lot of children. We know that it's not something kids naturally are born with and that we need to teach it to them. So we have to take the time to teach kids about resilience and teach children about conflict resolution strategies to be successful as they go through life. So we're going to start by first looking at what is resilience. Well, there's a lot of different ways that you can define resilience. But when you look at definitions from places like the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, the American Psychological Association, and the CDC, they have common themes like being able to handle stressful situations, being able to recover from difficulty or change, and being able to effectively manage situations that you encounter. In other words, being resilient means being able to bounce back from challenging situations. And as much as all of us in this room who are early childhood educators do, we can't protect kids from situations or the curveballs that life might throw at them. And it could way that a kid hopes they're going to go. And we have to do what we can to help prepare our children and the families that we work with to handle these curveballs. So we can provide opportunities throughout our day-to-day work with young children on how to help kids navigate these twists and turns. And in today's busy life, and I think about my own life is the same way, everyone is so busy and we're on the go and we're scheduled and there's extracurricular activities. We have to work on building these skills in early childhood so that we can protect not only the physical, but also the psychological well-being of the young kiddos that we work with. So this, I think, is a really great visual to kind of help to understand, you know, what it means to teach resilience. And this image comes from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child. And they suggest thinking about resilience as the seesaw, just like the image you see on the screen. So on one end of the seesaw, you have all the positive experiences that kids have. And then on the other end, you have their negative experiences and the negative outcomes. And when a child is able to balance that seesaw, when they're able to balance the positive outcomes along with, can you guys hear me now? I see someone said they lost audio. Can you hear me now?
We can. I think your internet was unstable for a minute, but you're good now.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, I just moved the computer a little closer as well to see if that helps. So when we think about this seesaw, we're hoping that we can, by teaching conflict resolution and resilience strategies, that we can help kiddos be able to balance what this looks like. In other words, if they can find a balance between the positive and negative, they're going to have strong resilience and conflict resolution strategies. On the other hand, if they can't figure out the balance, then things are quickly going to tip towards a negative way. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to make sure that we help young kids learn how to foster resilience. A little bit further on in our presentation, we're going to speak to you about some specific strategies that you can use right away to help foster resilience and conflict resolution. But there's several factors that have come about through research that are key characteristics that help to build children with strong resiliency skills. So one, and this is again according to the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, the single most common factor for children who develop resilience is at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive parent, caregiver, or other adult. And the key takeaway from that is it really only takes one. It's wonderful when a child has more than one, but it only takes one stable and committed relationship. And when kids have these type of relationships, they feel secure and they know that they have somebody that they can turn to for support, and that when they're in a struggling situation, they know that they can go to that safe person and that person's going to be there to help guide them. Along with having a positive relationship, children who have a strong sense of themselves also tend to be resilient. And we talk a lot in early childhood about building self-confidence, building self-worth, and helping kids to figure out who they are and value themselves. And this leads to kids who are resilient. It makes sense because when children have a strong sense of self, they feel confident. And when kids are confident, they're able to speak up for themselves and advocate for their needs. Another key factor that influences resilience is kids that are empathetic. In other words, they understand the feelings of others. This is important because when children are in tough situations, being able to see things from another perspective can help them figure out how to navigate the situation. And then finally, another common factor of kids that have strong resilience is that they have a strong peer group. And when kids have a strong network or a strong group of peers, they feel more connected. And these connections help to contribute to their self-worth, and allow them to feel confident when things maybe aren't going the way that they hope they were going. So now hopefully you have a better idea of, you know, what is resilience, what does the research say about resilience, and what are some key factors of kids that are resilient. We're going to go ahead and talk about what conflict resolution is before we move into some specific strategies.
Okay, as we start conflict, we need to talk about what is conflict. Do any of these situations on the screen look familiar to you? Early childhood educators and caretakers spend a considerable amount of time each day being the referee or problem solver for conflicts among children. Argument, squabble, disagreement, and misunderstanding are often words we use for the overarching word conflict. And I'm sure students use other words to describe conflict on top of those. Before we can talk about the ways to help children solve conflicts, we need to understand all that conflict involves. Why do conflicts spark between young children? The three things are things, space, and rules. Adults try our best to watch and observe children so many times, but so many times we can't catch the reason for the conflict. But there are those times that the trigger is unclear or the adults simply don't know what is happening or has happened. According to Christine Carter, author of Berkeley's The Greater Good magazine, stated the conflict among young children is caused by things, space, and following the rules. If children are in conflict about who will go down the slide next, this is a conflict caused by space. An example of a conflict and rule that rules could be is when it's time to line up, a child cuts in line, causing another child to start conflict because a student has broken the rules. Conflicts over things, such as toys, is the most common because young children view everything as their own. Carter also brought up a good point in that conflict sparks change, and change can be good. Think of a situation when children under your care have been in conflict and the resolution of the conflict resulted in a new direction of play or sparked a conversation between two children who might have not otherwise talked. Communication is the key to successfully solving conflicts. Communication is difficult for young children because their language and brain functions are still developing. Let's take a minute to talk about the impact of brain development. Oftentimes we don't think about brain development, but we should. The prefrontal lobes of the brain are in charge of our regulatory functions, which include things such as another's point of view, pause before acting, and the reason before responding. What we have to understand is that this area of the brain is not fully developed until the adolescent years. Given that all of the strategies for conflict resolution come from the prefrontal lobe, which is not developed in young children, adults must be the facilitators that give the children strategies and models on how to resolve conflicts in a positive manner. Knowing how to deal with conflict and confront it are skills that children will use throughout their life. Learning these skills and strategies early give the children the ability to cope when life does not go their way, which happens on a daily basis. Children as young as 2 feel that they are powerful. However, they have very little control of their lives at this stage, so that power is useless to them, and this is frustrating. This statement made a big impact on me because children do feel they're powerful, and we try to instill that power in them, but in many cases it is useless. So that would be a big point of frustration. According to Becky Bailey, the author of Conscious Discipline, empathy and acceptance are the 2 most powerful benefits children acquire when learning how to resolve conflict. Empathy teaches emotional regulation. Remember that regulation is part of that prefrontal lobe development, which will not be developed until adolescence. Acceptance, as defined by Conscious Discipline, is the active, non-judgmental embracing of the here and now. Acceptance gives us the ability to maneuver through things like transitions and uncomfortable situations with ease. Although we may not like a situation, knowing how to empathize and accept it allows us to move on productively.
All right, so we know that we've shared a lot of information with you, and we want to share some more with you about some specific strategies. But first, we want to stop and see, what so far has kind of piqued your interest? What's caught your attention? What information that we've shared with you about conflict resolution or resilience has captured your interest or was maybe surprising or stood out to you? Yeah, kids' view on power. And I think one of the most powerful things that I learned from an early mentor when I started teaching was you'll never win a power battle with a child.
Mm-hmm.
You can try and try and try, but you have to instead find ways to help, figure out what's going on and give the kid a voice. And we're going to talk about some of those strategies, but a power battle with a kid is pretty much never ending.
And I found as I mentor teachers that when they do engage in those power struggles with children, you find yourself going down to their level, and that takes away that adult perspective on things to help them solve their problem.
Yeah, Amy, I like that you pointed out the one stable adult. That was what was really powerful to me too when reading through some of the research, is it only takes one. And I agree that we know it and we hear it, but it's always a good reminder. And I can think of kids that I worked with years ago that I'm still connected with, and you're that person for that child for so long in their life. And especially nowadays with the ease of social media and email and things, it's so easy to stay in contact and to continue to be that one person of support for that kid. Awesome. See, Jessica said how the brain is not yet developed early on, and we need to be mindful of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That was a big shocking thing for me too. So we're expecting them to act developmentally appropriate, but with something that won't develop until their adolescence. It was just a kind of something to keep in the back of your mind as you're teaching. Especially
when in a minute we're going to share some strategies and you're thinking, okay, I'm trying these strategies and they're supposed to work and it's not working. Yeah. And it could just be that kid, they're not there yet, but that doesn't mean don't keep modeling it and don't keep sharing it and don't keep trying it, because the repetition is what's going to be so beneficial, and eventually they'll internalize what those strategies are and take them and use them.
And also the language we use as educators, sometimes we need to scale that down and maybe simplify it. I've always been told that less words is more for early learners, so that's something we have to be mindful as well.
Absolutely, Holly. Yeah, repetition is definitely the key. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and move on and talk about some specific strategies, because we know that those takeaways, these things that you can take and use right away in your everyday work, is what you guys are really hoping to get from today. So here we go. Here's the first one. The first thing that we want to talk about is social stories. So social stories are great for helping to foster resilience in young children. And there's a couple of examples up on the screen that you can look at while I'm talking. But social stories are just scripted stories that are based on real social situations. You can find some that are already done, and in fact, I'm going to share a resource with you at the end, but you can come up with these on your own as well, based on social situations or things that are occurring in your own classroom. And as you know, so on the screen, there's some examples of a story about a child that might have had some negative or traumatic experiences at school. And because of those experiences, the child is maybe anxious or a little bit worried about going back to school. In fact, this week in Arizona, our schools actually started. I have a kid who just started kindergarten, and you can see these social struggles and anxiety in some of these poor little kinders who are just so upset about, the anxiety of leaving mom or dad when they have to go on to the playground, or maybe they only went to half-day preschool and now it's all day. There's just all of these different strategies that are going on. Frank, I see your comment real quick about ACEs. Yes, and we're going to talk, I have a little bit later on about ACEs, but there is so much research about ACEs. If you don't know what ACEs are, it's adverse childhood experiences. And there's a ton of research that plays in with ACEs and resilience and trying to solve conflict. So when we take an anxious situation and we make a social story around it, we give the kid information that helps them to understand the expectations of the situation. So if you look at, there's the image that's up on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. It says, sometimes I get sad because I miss my family. It's okay, I will see them soon. And that my family is busy at work and school or at home, and I can have fun playing at school. So it's the idea of the social story is we're acknowledging a feeling or a sense of anxiety or worry or stressor that a kid might have. And then we give them, ways to work through it and say, okay, I miss them, but it's okay. My family's busy. They're at work and they're at school and they're at home, but I can still have fun even while I'm missing them. So social stories are all about, acknowledging and recognizing the fears and worries that kids might have, but then helping to reduce or minimize those fears that they might have. So, Can anybody think of an example of something that you might turn into a social story? Can you think of a situation that you might experience? I'll give it just a sec. Getting picked up late, yes, Allie, especially with young kids, because they see all these other moms and dads come and they're sitting there waiting and they think, oh my gosh, what if my mom or dad forgot about me? What if grandma forgot about me? Nobody's coming for me. Absolutely. So you could easily write a story about that and talk about, you know, what could happen and help to work through and alleviate some fears and help to foster that resilience in kids who might be concerned about something like that. Yeah, Hillary, social stories about what's coming next. And in fact, that's a really great transition, Hillary, into my next slide, because one of the next resilience and strategies that I want to talk about is routines and procedures. Kids need routines and kids need procedures. They want to know what's coming next and they want to know what's happening next, because when kids know that, it helps to reduce their anxiety, it helps to reduce their stress, and it lets them not worry when they know. You'll notice probably if you currently are working with young kids, or maybe you haven't yet, that the days where your routine is off in your classroom are some of the most challenging days. And it's because kids are unsure of what's coming and what's happening next. So, and part of the reason that this is such a powerful strategy for resilience is because, as we talked about earlier, confidence is one of the characteristics of kids who have resilience. When we have routines and procedures in place, it helps to create a sense of security and comfort. And this in turn helps to boost confidence. So when we use routines and schedules to create structure, we help to reduce any feelings of chaos or fear or what might happen, which can lead to stress. So as much as possible, we want to have predictable daily routines so that children know what's coming next each day. If we don't, then kids might worry about what's going on or what's going to happen. And we don't want to do that. We want to try to eliminate that and make school a safe place where they feel secure and safe and they know what's happening. We also want to make sure that we talk to kids about our routines and talk to kids about our procedures so that they know and they understand what to expect. If we think about what we know about self-confidence and resilience, then procedures makes a lot of sense. When children know what they're supposed to do, it helps to boost their confidence. And then another really important piece about helping to build resilience is developing relationships. When we build opportunities into our day that foster relationships, kids tend to be more resilient. Remember, the research that we shared is that kids only need one person, one safe person to be that person for them to go to. That's all about building relationships. When we develop nurturing bonds and respond to a child's need, it's important in helping them to establish that strong sense of self we've talked about. And there's a few different ways that you can work on building relationships. One, and I think this one is so important, is to greet your students each day. I always gave my kids, they could give me a hug, they could give me a high five, we could come up with a special handshake, but some way that I stopped and I connected and I looked at their face and they looked at my face and we made that connection every single day by greeting each other. When you do that, it tells them that you care about them, and then they're more likely to come to you and open up when they need some help. Another way that we really want to help to build relationships is getting to know our students. And sometimes, depending on the size of the class that you're working with, it can be a bit more of a challenge, but it's definitely doable. So depending on the age of the kids you work with, you can either have them share information about themselves with you, and even really young children are able to tell you things about themselves, or you can ask their family to share information, or even a combination of the both. But you can also do something during the first few weeks of school where kids get to bring in a bag with things all about themselves. And this, you know, kids get excited. They want to bring in things. They want to share about themselves, but really it benefits you as the teacher because you can find out what that student's interested in, and then you can start to build on those relationships. And then this last one, before the last one, let your students know about you, right? As much as we want to know about them, our kids want to know about us. Many of us have probably been in the situation where a kid from your class sees you at the grocery store, or they see you at the soccer fields with your own kids and they think, wait, my teacher doesn't live at school, or my teacher doesn't live in the classroom. So let them know who you are. Let them find out what your ideas are and what your interests are. And then this last one, I thought this was a really great one, and it's why the piggy bank is on the screen. But relationships don't happen overnight. There are some kids that you will work with who will be your best friend an hour into the school day, and there are others that might take a month or even 2 months to open up and really get to know you and feel comfortable with you. So this is a really great analogy I found when I was doing some research. This is from Vanderbilt Center on the Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning. And they talk about building relationships like a piggy bank. And so they said, when you work to build positive relationships, it's just like making a deposit in the bank. However, when an adult maybe corrects the behavior, or maybe you have a negative experience with that adult or their peers, maybe something doesn't go the way that you were hoping or that kid was hoping at school, it's almost like taking a withdrawal out of the bank. But over time, even with a few bumps in the road, right, even if you bought one too many Starbucks that month or whatever it might be, and those withdrawals come out of your bank account, even with bumps in the road, eventually that money in the bank is going to grow, and so will the relationship that you have with the kids that you work with. So let's look at this, some of these ideas we've tried, and here's the scenario. So the scenario is, Bradley is a 3-year-old boy who has recently moved to a new preschool after having some trouble getting along with his peers at his old preschool. On the first day of school, Bradley is crying and says he is scared to go to school. What are some resilience strategies that you might use to help Bradley feel safe about coming to school? What do you guys think? What are some strategies, that you could try? Yeah, read a story about first day jitters. Tell him when you greet him why you're excited he came to school, and keep it consistent every day with that greeting. And there was that viral video on YouTube that went around, I can't remember if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, where that teacher came up with a different handshake for every single kid who came in her class each morning. Just that special piece of connection, helps to reassure kids that you're there for them, you care about them, and you're happy that they're there that day. Let's see, show him where his things go in an area of the room to start playing in. Oh, awesome. Did you let the child pick the handshake we did? Yeah. I never tried picking a different one for each kid. I would let him give me a handshake, but I think that would be a really fun thing to do. Cassandra said I would ask about his favorite activity and have it ready and make sure he knows it's for him. Yeah, you remember the video, Holly? It was pretty fun. I watched it a couple times. Yeah, and we could do the resilience strategy with the social stories books that I talked about as well. You could come up with a story and read it with the whole class, not to maybe make Bradley singled out. It maybe wouldn't help right in that moment, but maybe reading that story a couple of days, you could do it whole group, you could do it in small group centers, and just to kind of reinforce and reassure that, it's okay to be scared, but this is what's gonna happen at school, and it's okay, and you're in a safe place.
That's also the importance of the routines too. So then Bradley knows what to expect and kind of gets in that same familiar routine every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Jessica, stay tuned for the kissing hand. Stay tuned. So, all right. Well, we've shared a few specific strategies for resilience, and now we're going to move and shift just a tiny bit and talk about some strategies for conflict resolution.
The first strategy we wanted to share for conflict resolution are solution cards. These were taken from the Vanderbilt Early Childhood Center for Learning as well, which is an amazing site that has a lot of resources. And solution cards are a great way to help young children find their words to resolve conflicts. The solution cards on the screen are from Vanderbilt, but you could actually make them and adapt them for any way you want into your classroom. I do love how there's visuals with the words as well, because some of those young learners obviously won't be able to read the words, but they can tell by looking at the children clearly what the conflict is and what they're going to try to say. The solution cards are taught by the teacher so that every child knows what each card means and how it can help them solve conflict. These cards should be placed in various places around the room, like the play kitchen area, the class library, the toy area, any places students may have some independence, because independence often breeds conflict. The cards can be made to fit the particular needs of the age group or class dynamic. The picture helps the students say what they're feeling or can start the conversation on how to accept and move on. The cards help with empathy as well, because they are the point of view from the person in conflict. And remember, empathy is one of those things that's not developed yet until adolescence. That comes later, so that this will help them understand that. Self-regulation is the act of controlling one's body and actions so they are able to resolve conflict safely and calmly. Children need tools to understand how to self-regulate and control their emotions. One tool is to teach students to speak from their perspective using I. And young children are in the Piaget's egocentric state, so they have the natural understanding for strategies centered around themselves. They love to talk about themselves, and using the word I just comes naturally to them. The I statements need to be taught to students through modeling and scenarios. Before these are taught, children must understand the different types of emotions and feelings attached. Teaching emotions is best done by using some literature connections. There's so much good literature out there that talks about feelings and all of these things, and kids just connect to those. There's also videos too, but nothing beats a good book and a read aloud. Conscious discipline defines levels of conflict into 3 different states. The states describe the type of conflict and the consequence. Keeping children safe is the #1 issue facing educators and caregivers today, sadly. So if conflict resolution cannot be taught with strategies and verbal expression, then a consequence may need to be implemented. Executive, emotional, and survival states are the clinical terms for what part of the brain the behavior is coming from. When giving children consequences for their actions, we need to determine the need for their action in order to give a consequence that will help them to solve this problem, as well as the issues in the future. Problem solving will be the adult acting as a facilitator between the children in conflict. Allow the child to verbalize their feelings, hear both sides, and validate their feelings. And these are all very important. The children need to have a voice, and that's their most powerful tool. And like we said earlier, they are all powerful, but a lot of times their power, they can't use it. So this is a good way to let them use that power and encourage verbalizing how they feel. And it's also powerful to hear both sides of the story, sometimes with the children right there together to hear each other verbalize. And the teacher as a facilitator is even a better idea. Other times you do need to hear both sides separately. Let's see. Pose ideas for solutions, allowing the children to form a compromise. When the need is connection, the student is not getting their emotional needs met. The adult needs to pull the student from the conflict, spend a little time reading to them, having them draw a picture, allowing anything that allows them to connect and self-regulate before approaching the conflict at hand. The consequences for conflicts that put the safety of the student at risk are those that need a straightforward, direct approach, which could include having the children take a think time or definitely being removed from the situation. The parents should be informed of safety conflicts, and the caregiver, parents, and students should talk together to make sure the child knows this is the best way to solve the conflict. And that's where it's very important, going back to what Jen said earlier about children always have that one person that they can count on, because when they're feeling in an emotional state like that, it's really good for them to have that person. The next one is modeling. Modeling appropriate behavior will, in most cases, make the biggest impact on children. Role playing, any of those things, they love to see each other act out things. So the teacher modeling and having them model is very powerful. Having students do modeling through role play makes an even bigger connection, because the children can see the empathy and acceptance in their peers as they act out the scene. There are curricula written for this type of modeling, and there are books with examples of the social story model that will fit many of the conflict scenarios the students may encounter. Here is a scenario of conflict. 2 4-year-old boys, Dana and Nora, are creating a space rocket from a large cardboard boxes. Jamie, 3 1/2, watches this exciting action on the nearby launch pad. After a while, Jamie asks, "Can I play astronaut?" Dana immediately responds, "No, weirdo, you are not strong enough to build a big rocket." Angry, his feelings hurt, Jamie kicks over the box. Then he retorts, "You can't come to my birthday party," and runs away to tell his teacher. Now that we've talked about some conflict resolution strategies, read through the scenario again and think about ways that you could decrease that conflict by using some of the strategies we've talked about. And remember, like, the empathy and regulating and acceptance gives them the ability to move on.
If you guys have any ideas, just share them in the chat with us.
Like one thought I have for the conflict resolution is maybe if they had those solution cards in that area too, to maybe express how they feel. They could, if they don't have their words, they can show the other friends their visuals of how they feel, and that might spark some conversation. We just need to get them talking and sharing their feelings, which is the hardest part. This aggression and that just like spontaneous behavior is what they resort to, just because that's the power they have. Yeah, pictures and showing different emotions, that's very powerful. Yeah, children just at this age, visual, the more visuals you can give them is the best thing, because then they can really see it if they don't understand the words. Okay, linking literature to conflict resolution. It's another great way to teach both resilience and conflict to resolution to young children. One series I thought of was the series Llama Llama by Anne Dudney. It's a great resource for teaching emotions on how to handle the emotions, how to handle their emotions. The series addresses specific conflicts that students experience often, like Llama Llama, Mrs. Mama. That's one that's being read in kindergartens probably across our whole district this week, because we just went back to school. Llama Llama, Time to Share, that's a big one. And the Bully Goat. So those are all ones that the kids will connect with the characters and then give them ideas about how to solve those problems. Another one I always used when I was a kindergarten teacher was the Howard B. Wigglebottom series by the We Do Listen Foundation. Is an extremely valuable resource for teaching conflict resolution. Howard, he's a bunny. He gets himself into so many situations that will be relevant and meaningful to the students. Howard is available in the book form, or many of the books are available on the video through the We Do Listen website, and they're all free. They have a song with them, and the kids just really attach to Howard. The situations in these stories involve problem solving, connection, and safety scenarios, so the children can connect to the differences between conflict resolution strategies. And next we are going to read part of the story, The Kissing Hand, and see what ideas we have for how we can use this story to teach resilience and conflict resolution.
Yes, so Jessica, earlier we said stay tuned when you mentioned The Kissing Hand, because it's one of the greatest stories for many reasons, but it's definitely relevant when it comes to conflict resolution and resilience. So we're not going to read the whole story, but we're going to read just a little bit of it, and we have some of the pictures up here for you to follow along with us on the screen.
Chester Raccoon stood at the edge of the forest and cried. "I don't want to go to school," he told his mother. "I want to stay home with you. I want to play with my friends and play with my toys and read my books and swing on my swing. Please, may I stay home with you?" Mrs. Raccoon took Chester by the hand and nuzzled him on the ear. "Sometimes we all have to do things we don't want to do," she told him gently, "even if they seem strange and scary at first. But you will love school once you start. You'll make new friends and you'll play with new toys, read new books and swing on new swings. Besides," she added, "I know a wonderful secret that will make your nights at school seem as warm and cozy as your days at home." Chester wiped away his tears and looked interested. "A secret? What kind of secret?" "A very old secret," said Mrs. Raccoon. "I learned it from my mother, and she learned it from hers. It's called the kissing hand." "The kissing hand?" asked Chester. "What's that?" "I'll show you." Mrs. Raccoon took Chester's left hand and spread open his tiny fingers into a fan. Leaning forward, she kissed Chester right in the middle of his palm. Chester felt his mother's kiss rush from his hand, up his arm, and into his heart. Even his silky black mask tingled with a special warmth. Mrs. Raccoon smiled. "Now," she told Chester, "whenever you feel lonely and need a little loving from home, just press your hand to your cheek and think, 'Mommy loves you, Mommy loves you,' and that very kiss will jump to your face and fill you with toasty warm thoughts."
All right, so what do you guys think? How could you use that story, The Kissing Hand, to help, as a springboard conversation with the kids that you work with about some resilience, and to, build a conversation to help the kids you work with foster their sense of worth and security and stability and to be more resilient? Oh, I love it, Allison. She said she used to trace everyone's hands and child's loved ones. So the kids and maybe the moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, whoever brought them to orientation, and take a picture of them. And on the first day, they could go touch their hands and see their families. That's
a great
great.
idea.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah, and it just gives them that sense of safe, that safe spot, that they have that safe person right there in their classroom. That's a great strategy. Anybody else have any other ideas? See, Autumn said the book helps to spark a conversation with children, how their loved ones are still with them even when they're gone. Definitely. And you could, read this story on the first day of school and do the activity that Allison talked about. You could have done the hand tracing at your Meet the Teacher orientation event, and maybe the kids and the families didn't know why. And then on the first day, you could read the story, and then you could make your own version and turn it into a social story, and use it to help kids who might be struggling to work through it. There will be different reasons why kids are maybe sad or struggling or feeling lonely when they come to school. So you could kind of use it as a springboard to turn it into creating each child's own story. Maybe they could create their own versions of the kissing hand. There's lots of different things you can do.
Another thing you could do too as well at orientation or Meet the Teacher, maybe tell the parents you're going to be reading this book. The parents could also read it with their children beforehand. So then when they get to school, they already have that at-home connection. That might be a fun activity for them to do as well.
And Lauren said she'd send home a hand with a heart on it for the parent to write a special note to their child for the first day of school. Mm-hmm. You would read all the notes to the class, and then the child had it at his or her table to look at and read.
And even those little notes in lunch boxes are a huge hit, or snack containers. Those are always fun for children too.
Yeah. We don't know if anybody did, but one of the things that was listed in the program for the conference was that you could bring a book to share. Did anybody happen to bring a book, or does anybody have a story that they like to use that they think is helpful for teaching resilience or conflict resolution? We don't have time for people to actually read a story, but if you brought one or can think of an idea of one to share, feel free to go ahead and share that with us. Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead and move on. But if you do have one or you can think of one, go ahead and stick it in the chat, and then we'll kind of capture those ideas as we're going. But in the interest of time, we're going to keep moving on.
Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is involving families. Communication is key always. Communicating with parents is such a good way to get everyone on the same page. If parents are informed, they are more likely to incorporate what is being done at school into the home. Weekly communication should be done in a newsletter form or weekly wrap-up by email. Make sure to add what social emotional skills are being worked on and the strategies that is helping to resolve conflict and build resilience in the classroom. More times than not, parents are struggling with their children's behavior issues as well, so your input and ideas will be greatly appreciated. You should also communicate with individual families often. We have to let parents know when a student misbehaves, but it's equally as important to communicate the positive things the child does. For example, a child was able to verbalize their feelings to another student to promote conflict resolution. Encourage parents to ask questions and inquire about their child's social and emotional well-being. Make sure to be consistent and reliable when giving consequences and communicating those consequences to parents. That consistency is also a key. Play doesn't come naturally to many parents, so most would appreciate your ideas that would allow them to connect with their children while having fun. You could give parents social stories to act out with their children. This would be a playful way for the parent to see how their child copes with conflict and approaches resolution. Encourage families to take walks with their children or go to the park. Provide parents with talking points that focus on emotions. For example, if the child has a trouble with the monkey bars, have the parent ask the child how they feel at that moment, then work through the solutions to their feelings. And along with connecting with families and helping families engage in resilience and conflict resolution, building strategies with their children, another way you can promote families working on these strategies is to make sure they know the importance of discussing their feelings and the feelings of their child. Sometimes these are not always easy conversations to have, but they are necessary. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics Office in Children, Youth, and Families, children need to learn how to appropriately express and regulate emotions. They look to the parents as models for all sorts of behavior, including emotional regulation. Parents can easily do this by having simple conversations with their child. For example, when their child is having a rough time, they can use phrases like, when I lose a game, I feel sad too, or when I have an accident, I feel frustrated. When parents do this, children start to connect, understanding how they are feeling, and they are more likely to begin to make connections between how they're feeling and specific emotions. The key to this is helping to share these ideas with families. As we just discussed, communication is key. So share ideas like this in your newsletters or on your class website. Does anybody have any other ideas for how you might go about sharing this information with families? Oh, group texting, yeah, and things like Class Dojo and Blooms. Those are new apps that teachers are using to communicate with families.
A lot of people use that Remind app as well, is a really common one. I've seen some, and it can be a little bit trickier with permission, but I've seen lots of teachers who form closed private, Facebook groups, or they even sometimes will create Instagram pages, or they'll find ways to use social media as a meeting place and a way to connect with different families. Yeah, Autumn Class Dojo is a great one, and the kids really seem to like it.
Yeah, the movie Inside Out, that's always a great emotion learning movie to refer to.
You do, Cassandra, and have you had good feedback from parents? Cassandra shared that they have a closed Facebook parent group.
And some parents do have some strong beliefs on social media either way, but it is one good route to definitely have.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's awesome. I think part of the key is making the information accessible.
Yeah.
We know that parents are on their phones all the time. And so the more accessible we can make it, the better. I still think good old fashioned newsletters are a fabulous tool as well. But we know that some parents just open that folder or open that backpack, and that newsletter just goes straight in their recycle bin. But if it was on the phone, if there was a digital way to share it, that they might be more apt to use it.
And I think more and more teachers are finding out that parents don't look in the folder every day just because they get busy. So some things are easily missed on paper. Oh, parent involvement days. That's a good idea too, to have parents come in.
People always come with food, right, Hillary? I don't know what it is. It draws everybody in.
Especially donuts.
Yeah, awesome. Well, before we wrap up, we just wanted to share a few additional resources with you. And as soon as I stop sharing my screen, I'll copy these links into the chat. But these are 4 of our favorite resources when it comes to giving you more information and even parent-friendly information about resilience and conflict resolution. The first one, Building Resilience in Young Children. This link, and again, I'll put it in the chat in a minute, it actually contains a 24-page handbook all about resilience. And you can use it yourself, you can share it with colleagues, you can share it with families. It's not written at a high language level. It's written at a very friendly conversational tone, so it's really good for families. The website healthychildren.org is run by the American Academy of Pediatrics and has a ton of resources. They have information about resilience, conflict resolution, and pretty much any other topic you could think of that's beneficial for young children, but they have really great resources on both resilience and conflict resolution. And then the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard is one of my go-tos when I'm looking for credible yet relatable and easy to understand information. They have an entire section on resilience and conflict resolution with a lot of great resources, a lot of great visuals. They have fabulous videos as well that really break down this information into meaningful and manageable chunks. And then finally, Vanderbilt Center on the Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning has tons of already developed, and as teachers, we know that we love to not have to reinvent the wheel. So tons of already developed activities about resilience and conflict resolution.
And also on Vanderbilt, they do have all their products in Spanish as well. So if you have like a dual enrollment or dual language program, those are available in both languages, which is really nice.
So that is all that Erin and I have for for everybody here today. So if you have any questions, we're happy to stick around. Otherwise, we just thank you so much for taking some time to learn about conflict resolution and resilience with us.